Hey guys, it's Jim Fuge, and this is guitarbyjimi.com. And in today's guitar lesson, free guitar lesson, I'm going to teach what the rhythm guitar is doing on rock and roll. Now, why am I chose this lesson for a few reasons actually. Because I think a lot of people don't actually play it right. It's probably one of the first ones. Number two, I think it's a lot more difficult to play than people realize. And when I say play, hey, if you're fooling around with your friends, yeah, that's one thing. And after I'm done teaching this lesson, I'm going to prove it to you, and then you try it, and you will be convinced as well. My point is that if you try to do this, don't forget now when he recorded this, on the album, right? It was a perfectly played guitar part. So, not too bad, right? But you try doing it for the entire song, the entire time, and make it sound great. And don't make a mistake for 4 minutes. It's not as easy as it sounds. So it takes a lot of concentration, actually, you know what I mean? So anyway, there's so much to talk about this just one little rhythm, believe it or not. And hopefully I'll shed some light and show you some stuff that maybe you didn't realize, I hope. So the first thing is that, well, Jimmy Page is, being the master producer that he is it's hard to tell sometimes if there's 19 guitars on one song or if there's two, because he's such a good producer. And in the opposite way, let's just say this. For example, on Song Remains the Same, I mean, my God, I think there's probably 5 guitars on that, right? So, but it sounds like 1 or 2. I mean, it's just amazing. But there's little things, one guy's going, that could be the 12 string here in that C note, but somebody's going, one guy might just be staying there while the other guy is moving. So I'm just saying that's an example that he's actually more guitars, and it sounds like maybe only 2, but there's probably 5 guitars on that song, I think, actually. Anyway, so rock and roll is actually the opposite. I think there's only 2 guitars on this song, so that's where it's pretty interesting, because I listened to it quite a bit. I mean, obviously, over the years, for sure, 1,000 times for sure, at least. But just recently, in the last few weeks, I listened to it a lot, and I put headphones on, and I isolated the left and the right. And I got to tell you, I think there's really only 2 guitars in this. So that's the first kind of interesting thing. And it actually is going to dovetail into what this lesson's all about, right? Obviously, one guy's going, I know he does it here. And you can hear him ringing out, so you know that the one guy is just doing that. I'm not talking about the live, I'm talking about the studio album, Stairway to Heaven album, right? So, and by the way, before I get into this, and by the way, if anybody wants a comment, please do. I just wonder what kind of amplifier he used for this song, because this song sounds different, guitar sound. Well, Black Dog a little bit too, actually. He's got that kind of a sound on the amp a bit. So I'm not sure. It doesn't sound to me like a traditional Marshall. I don't know. It sounds to me like that Fender Supro. I think that he used that amp on the first Zeppelin album. If any of you guys know what he used, I'd be curious to see what your comment is on that. Because it doesn't sound, I mean, it sounds like a Les Paul to me, I think. But I'm not sure if it's like a traditional Marshall type amp that he's using on this song. It's just could also be the way how he recorded it with the mic too. But anyway, anybody have a comment on that, feel free to write it down. I'll be curious what you think. But so since there's only 2 guitars, when you listen to this, I'm telling you, there's only 2 guitars on this song, rhythm-wise. So that's what makes it a little more challenging, actually. So let's get into, and then I'll show you how to play it and get it down as well. So the trick to getting this down, this rhythm part, if you really want to play it right, and then I'll tell you what I do live. I do kind of the same thing that Jimmy Page does. I hold up both parts, right? Is to think like a rhythm player. Don't think like you're riffing, doing riffs. Think like a rhythm player. The trick to getting this rhythm down is down, up, religious. So, that's the key. Now, it sounds like it's not too difficult, but if you try to remember this, that's the key. Down, up. Just think down, up between those 2 strings, the A and the D, and obviously as you move to the next chord, it's the same thing. Obviously keep moving the strings, but Try not to worry so much about the actual... Try not to worry about that. If you just do down, up, actually you'll get it faster than worrying about the notes that you got to hit. Okay, so let's go over it, shall we? The first thing is that, you know, because it's really more of a rhythm and not a specific note thing, sometimes you hear, you know, sometimes you hear, right? Right? So sometimes you hear, right? Stuff like that. So the reason why is because he's really just getting the A and the E together. Right? You see what I'm saying? So you really can't say it's this. Dun, 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 dun. It's not really that. It's not really this. Right? So that's the first thing. That's why you have to think of this like a rhythm and not necessarily, okay, these are the exact notes that he's playing. Now, along those lines, and I'll get to how to play it, don't worry. Along those lines, there's something also very specific in this rhythm. There's something very specific. Now, and when I tell you, go back and listen to it, and you will hear it. Okay, so when the rhythm does its thing, and I'll show you what it is in a minute, but you probably have an idea anyway, but what he's actually doing is, okay, let me try and make sure you can see both hands. Right? The first time he encounters this C note, he always bends it almost, if not exactly, to a C sharp note. So his intention is to get it, make it sound like a C sharp note. Okay, he doesn't do it like this. There's always a bend, and when the first time he touches the C sharp note, it's always to like the major third, to like a C, excuse me, did I say C sharp? He touches the C note, it's always to a C sharp note, right? To a real, I mean, if not very close, it's always exact. It's very, very close. So assume it's C sharp is the intention every time he does it. That's a little too much. So, okay. 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 And then on the ending part, he's going to hit the same C note again, but this time when he ends that phrase, he always ends with a C note. He doesn't bend it too much. He bends it very little. Very little. As opposed to when he starts it, which is okay, so you see, that's the first secret of this rhythm. Okay, and if you listen to it, he's very religious about how he does it. He always does like the third, the major third. Okay, and then when he comes back, he really doesn't bend it that much. He bends it a little bit, but he stays closer to C. So it sounds like this. Pretty cool, huh? So that's the first little secret of this thing. And he's very, like I said, religious about it, if you listen to it. Okay, so the second thing is, in between, after every kind of like general riff, right? He's keeping this thing going. So slowly. The only hesitation is when you end it. Okay, it's the only slight hesitation, but it's slight, but he goes right into that rhythm that's really holding everything together. So actually, one of the ways to get it down is if you really back up for a minute, all right? So back up for a minute, just do this. Just keep good rhythm. Think like a rhythm player. That's step one. Step two is incorporate this now into it. And then step 3 is incorporate the riff now. Start with this first, watch. Right, then you're going to do exactly the same thing in D and then E. Just keep that rhythm going, man. That's the key. Don't worry so much about the notes. The notes will fall into place. This is the key. The picking hand, the rhythm hand, man, is just keep that going. Just keep that thing going. And it's actually backwards than what you would think, right? Oh, you're saying, oh, this is a riff, this is a riff. It is, but it's really a rhythm. That's the trick to this thing. And plus, you know, like a lot of people don't realize that first bend is always to the real third, major third, and then the second time when you get out of the phrase, it's really not. It's to the minor third. It's like to a C note. So that was his intention when you hear that. And he does it all the time. So you know that's his intention. He does it in D, and he does it in E too. Amazing, right? And now after every time you do the riff, you always have to do a full revolution of, right? So watch. See how I'm jumping? Watch. See? So he's always completing that phrase. Right? All right, now, you're saying, oh, all right, well, big deal. It's not that bad of a deal. Yeah, well, here we go. Try playing it with the record for 4 minutes straight, because it's not a short song, right? This is a song of, it's deceivingly harder than it sounds. It's a lot of precision. So, you know, hey, listen, you know, if you had to record this and you were Jimmy Page, you know, is it okay to make a few mistakes? I don't know. Not for this kind of a thing. He was pretty accurate with his recording techniques. He didn't have like to have a lot of mistakes on record. Who does? And he was a lot more precise than people even realize, I think. So that's that, right? Then the next thing is, if you're a bass player, you know, John Paul Jones was holding down the, let me take my pick down, he's going, you know, something like this. Can't do it on a guitar, you know. But he's holding that pedal, right? He's going with his fingers, obviously, right? He's not a picker, really. You try doing that for 4 minutes straight and see how you do. And last but not least, let's face it, John Bonham. This is a high stamina song, man. I'm not a drummer, but I know enough about drums to be dangerous. I know many drummers, of course, and I'm sure you guys do too. You know, this is, you know, I mean, it's tricky too, and there's a lot of great cymbal shots in it too, by the way, as you probably know. Some choice cymbal shots that Bonham does that kind of make the song too, actually. Nice little accents. Whatchamacallit. So, you know, but just to hold that, you know, hold that thing down for 4 minutes, and he's blasting it with his foot and his hi-hat hand and his snare and stuff like that. I mean, you know, that's hard to keep that going perfectly as well as possible, right, in great time. So, let's see. Well, by the way, I'm morphing a little bit, you know, I don't really care. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure this is right, because a good friend of mine who's an awesome drummer told me, you know why a lot of drummers can't get that timing right in the beginning? I think he starts, you know, it sounds like to our ear, it sounds like he's starting on the first beat. He's actually not. If you listen to it, he's starting on the, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's the 3 and beat. And then so he's starting on the 3, if you can believe that. Isn't that crazy? But that's Led Zeppelin, man. You like the Beatles. I think he starts on the 3 and beat. If you change the way you think, and don't assume the first time you hear something it's always on the 1 beat, if you change the way you think and just assume I'm right for a second, it's something, I think it's the 3 and beat. If you do that, actually, by the time he comes in with the band, it's easily on 1. Isn't that crazy? So this is maybe for drummers more, or guitar players tell your drummer friends this, see what they think. I think that's the key to getting that rhythm down in the beginning with the drums, to getting it right. So isn't that crazy? But it's Led Zeppelin, man. They're tricky guys, just like the Beatles. So anyway, so if you put it all together, you know, again, the key is just to keep the rhythm. Think like a rhythm player. And this, by the way, this shows off Jimmy Page as a rhythm player. And Eddie Van Halen's a great rhythm player too. Sometimes these things get overlooked because, let's face it, we're enamored with their great guitar playing, their lead playing, but we forget how great of rhythm guitar players they are. And as a fellow guitar player, it's really important to have great rhythm and be on the money with rhythm too, man. It's really important, okay? So I challenge you now, try this with the record and play this thing, play it perfect. Pretend you are Jimmy Page and you're going to be recorded now. You ready to hit the red button? Let's hit it, right? You see how easy it is to make one mistake on this thing, and don't forget they probably played together at the same time, right? Because it was 1970, whatever, 3 or 4, whatever, and you know, they probably played all together at the same time. So hey, that's like the old days, man. Like Deep Purple too. You had to be really good. You know, if one guy made a mistake, that's it. Take the whole stupid thing over again, right? So I mean, you know, you got to give these guys a lot of credit. There was no Pro Tools in that day. You couldn't just, you could punch stuff in, but it was hard. It was not easy, and it was taped too. So try and play the whole thing in its entirety, and always keep this going. So watch it. Let's try and do it one time through, and then I'll slow it down for you. So fast, if you did it, it would be. So, of course, that part. But I'm just saying, when this rhythm comes in, man, it's hard. It's really not that easy, you know. So that riff, right? That riff is there. So I mean, you know, you have to keep. Been a long time since I rock and roll. So once you go back to that riff. Okay, now I understand he doesn't do it throughout the whole song, but I'm just trying to make a point. Is that every time this riff comes in, you got to be on the money every time, you know? And I'm pretty sure it's, whatchamacallit? No, I was going to say something else, but I'm pretty sure that every time he does it, it's dead on. So, I mean, you know, try and play with the record and see how you do with that. So the trick to this thing is, again, the first time you hit the C note, it's really C sharp. And when you come out of it, it's really just C. Nice little trick. And the trick is to keep that rhythm going the whole time. So, let's see. So now when I do this live, you know, let me do it slow for you. So right there is a little hesitation, and that's how you still keep down up. Okay, and let me just say one more thing. I think I'm just watching myself too. You see, and that's the thing. See, I just do it by rhythm feel, which is how you should do it. I think the only exception is when you come out of it. I come back. I stay on an up pick. I stay in an up pick just for that, so one extra up pick there. So when you put it all together, it flows really well. And by the way, now if you're comfortable just keeping it all down up with no exception, that's fine too. Whatever comes natural to you. It comes natural to me, well, because I think part of it is you're holding onto that note just for a split second. So that's that extra up pick is where I do that. Okay, but for the most part, it's down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, So why do I do that? Because it comes natural to me. So that's the key, man. If you feel the rhythm right, your pick will fall into place. And once your pick falls into place, this part will fall into place. Don't worry so much about the actual notes. That'll just have to get used to doing it. But what is tricky is, though, every time you do the riff, you got to be religiously coming back to this. Which is kind of funny because it's not a separate guitar that somebody's going. One guy's going like this, and the second guy's going. Which actually, that's something Page would do, actually, just to have a guitar do that. But in this case, he didn't. It's actually one guitar doing it. So, and by the way, last but not least, of course, when I play this live, I try and do it like Jimmy Page, and I'll tell you something funny now. I don't do it up here. I know he does, I think, a lot of the times, at least live. Why don't I do it there? I mean, maybe he likes the weight of the strings. That's why he does it there, and he keeps his fingers, exactly like that. I don't know. I mean, why run up to here if you don't have to from here? You know what I mean? So I usually just do it here. And then you can do what you want at that point. Trying to even get a little rhythm in there before I do this. He probably does that for the weight. Okay, so I'm Jim Fuge. Sorry, I just had to have a little fun there. And that's rock and roll. Hopefully you've learned something out of this thing. I'm sorry if I confused a little bit, but I did mean what I say, which is down. It's really down up. That's really the thing you want to keep. And like I said, the only exception is that one thing where he hesitates very slightly before he goes back into the... That's a little slight hesitation, and I do up pick again. So let's see what else. And the key to it is just to get the rhythm first. 1 2 1 2 1 2. I mean, it's 4 4, but you can think of it like 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. You can think of it like that too. So I'm Jim Fuge, and if you like the lead break to this, I do have it on my website, but it's for sale. It's cheap though. But if you're interested, I do have it off the record, including that very jumbled, garbled part that starts it off. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that part is very specific and very hard. This is another thing, man. Jimmy Page is a tricky guy. He's not just fooling around, drinking a beer, and doing that in the studio. I'm telling you, if you buy that lesson, you'll see what I mean. It's very specific what he's doing in that solo before he gets to the prominent part that we all know, And even that's not so simple. There's a lot of little tricky things to that part, too. Kind of like, Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen, guys like that. I really disagree when people say, oh, it was just off the cuff and this and that. I don't agree with that so much, especially in the studio, because those guys were mastermind guitar players, and Page was also a mastermind producer as well. Believe me, I think these guys thought a lot of this stuff through, man. Could they wail and just be free-flowing and loose live? Of course. But we're not talking about live. We're talking about in the studio. So that jumbled part that you hear in the beginning of the rock and roll lead break, I'm telling you, man, if you learn it, it is hard, and it is wacky, and even the timing of it is wacky, too. So you see something like that, you say, man, there's no way he just did that no way he did that on the cuff. He was way more well thought out than people even realize, still to this day. I mean, I know everybody loves Page, and so do I, but I'm just saying, I think he's even more underrated than people even realize still. You have to really get into him deep to see it, and then learn this stuff off the record. You say, my God, I can't believe he's doing all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I guess I'm in the mood to talk about Led Zeppelin, so I'll stop right now, but I can't help myself. Those guys and the Beatles. Anyway, so I'm Jim Fuge. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson as much as I've enjoyed teaching it to you. Send me some nice comments and all that. Give me a thumbs up and all that kind of good stuff. Tell your friends and all that. I appreciate it very much. And I'll see you guys on the next video. All right, everybody, rock on. All right?